single dust mote hangs suspended in a shaft of sunlight, drifting across a warm hardwood floor. It is 3:14 p.m. on a Tuesday in mid-July. A 7-year-old child sits on the rug, watching the speck float. To the child, this afternoon is an ocean. The hours stretch out, vast and unmapped, extending into a horizon so distant that dinner feels like another epoch, and adulthood belongs to a mythical future that may never arrive. 30 years later, that same person sits in a car at a red light. It is 3:14 p.m. on a Tuesday in mid-July. They glance at the dashboard clock, blink, and it is suddenly autumn. Entire months have vanished into an unremembered blur of commutes, grocery receipts, and identical emails. Most people believe this acceleration is an illusion born of busyness. We tell ourselves that life simply becomes crowded, that our schedules overflow, and that time slips through our fingers because we are looking the other way. That is not what is happening. The acceleration of time as we age is not a trick of lifestyle. It is a biological imperative, a silent structural rewiring of the way human consciousness registers reality. Your brain is actively editing your life, deleting the footage, and increasing the playback speed of your existence. And it begins much earlier than you think. In 1897, the French philosopher Paul Janet proposed a mathematical relationship that seemed almost too simple to be true. He suggested that human memory processes time proportionally. To a 5-year-old child, a single year represents 20% of their entire existence on Earth. The memory bank is sparse, making 12 months feel like a vast continent of experience. By the time that same individual reaches 50, a single year represents just 2% of their life. Relatively, it has shrunk to a fraction of its former scale. Through the lens of pure mathematics, a year at 50 should feel 10 times shorter than a year at 5. At first, Janet's proportional theory sounds neat. Time should accelerate smoothly, like a logarithm you can predict. But your lived experience disagrees. Time doesn't ramp up, it jumps. Entire decades can evaporate in a single season, while a 5-minute crisis can feel like years. So, you stop staring at calendars and start staring at your brain's visual machinery. In 2019, mechanical engineering professor Adrian Bajan proposed a startling link. The sensation of time passing tracks how fast your brain processes visual information. When you're young, your neural network is pristine. Signals race through short, unblemished pathways with minimal resistance. Your brain can digest scenes quickly, updating now briskly. As you age, those routes grow less efficient, processing slows, and the same moments feel stretched out. That's the missing machinery. Perceived time is what your brain can render per second, not what the clock says in each moment, even when unnoticed. Think of your mind as a camera that never rests. In infancy, it snaps hyper-detailed frames, dozens every second, so that one ordinary minute is packed with data points, like a whole film reel compressed into 60 seconds. You don't notice the machinery, you just feel time thick, rich, and long. Then your body grows. The brain gets bigger, pathways stretch, but tiny microstructures begin to wear in natural ways. Signals don't travel as smoothly. Electrical flow meets more resistance. The result is simple. Vision is gathered and processed a bit more slowly. The wall clock keeps faithfully ticking, 60 seconds. Your inner camera, though, runs at a lower frame rate. When you look back on a day, your brain replays a stream with fewer frames, less detail per second. That's why the same time can feel shorter, even when nothing changes. Fewer snapshots mean moment logs less, and memories blur sooner. Because there are fewer frames to process, the mind arrives at an alarming conclusion. The day went by faster. You are not imagining that time is moving faster. In a very real biological sense, you are experiencing less time per second than you did when you were young. Beyond the physical hardware of neural processing lies an even more aggressive editor, predictive coding. The human brain consumes roughly 20% of the body's energy while accounting for only 2% of its total mass. To keep you alive without burning through your metabolic reserves, the brain is engineered for ruthless efficiency. When a child enters a room, everything is novel. The pattern on the wallpaper, the scent of damp wool, the texture of a wooden chair leg. The child's brain must actively construct a mental model for every detail because it has no precedent. It logs high-density sensory data. It works hard, and that work creates a long, detailed temporal record. Now consider an adult entering their kitchen for the 10,000th time. The adult brain does not look at the room. It does not need to. It deploys a pre-rendered template. It recognizes the environment instantly, declares it safe and familiar, and shuts down high-resolution recording to save power. Your brain enters a state of predictive automation. It skips the present moment because it already knows what happens next. This is the cognitive paradox of adulthood. The better you adapt to survival, the faster your life disappears. When you commute to work along a familiar route, your brain enters a state known as automaticity. It stops writing sensory data to long-term memory. When you arrive at your destination, the 30-minute drive has been compressed into 0 seconds of conscious recall. You did not lose those 30 minutes because you were distracted. You lost them because your brain determined that nothing in those 30 minutes was worth preserving. One commute, repeated for 40 years. Same route, same desk, same grocery lights, same evening routine. Your mind treats it like a template. Routine doesn't just soothe, it silently erases. Under that perceptual filter, a chemical clock keeps running down. Deep inside the basal ganglia, dopamine neurons set the pace. People know dopamine for reward, but it also acts like an internal pacemaker. When dopamine levels are high, your internal clock runs faster and time feels crisp. Small moments, tiny pauses at a crosswalk, a new song on the radio, land with sharp precision. In childhood, dopamine floods the nervous system. Everything feels vibrant, discoveries spark a chemical cascade, and the world's clock speed stays high. As you move past adulthood into middle age, baseline dopamine production drifts downward. That's why years can start to feel thinner, while outside ticking seems to drag. Change, novelty, and attention can brighten that inner tempo again. Imagine your brain's chemical pacemaker starts to tick more slowly. Inside you, a second stretches, while the outside world seems to sprint ahead suddenly. That's why it can feel like you're standing still on a train platform as an express roars past. Your internal pace changes, so external time looks faster. Now picture extreme terror. A sudden car crash, a slip from a roof. The moment you realize there's no time to think, your filters drop instantly. Adrenaline floods the amygdala, and the brain switches into high-resolution mode. Every sound, flash of light, and sharp edge gets stamped into memory. Afterward, people often say it was in slow motion. Not because time truly bent, but because your brain captured the event so densely that 3 seconds replays like 3 minutes. In a strange way, you don't measure time by the clock. You measure it by the weight of what you remember in hindsight. Back to childhood. One summer vacation can feel like an epoch. Sun-warmed pavement, salt on your lips, familiar faces, and afternoons stretching forever. Now look at the last 5 years as an adult. Chances are it blurs into one long, indistinct haze. That's retrospective time compression. Your memory doesn't store time like a continuous video. It stores time as anchor points, moments of novelty, emotion, and change. In youth, life is packed with firsts. The first day of school, the first time you drive, the first heartbreak, the first time you get lost in a new city. Each first stamps a bookmark, so your brain counts more moments and stretches duration in retrospect. Later, firsts thin out. What's left is maintenance, the same routines, 200 similar Tuesdays. Repetition gets merged into a single summary, and the years feel faster. So the trick is noticing what's new each day. It does not store 200 days, it stores 1 day multiplied by 200. The years do not shrink because time is moving faster. They shrink because there is nothing left inside them for the brain to keep. We live under the comforting illusion that we inhabit a continuous, smooth stream of time called now. Physics has long disputed this idea. Albert Einstein demonstrated that there is no universal now, that time is relative, stretching and bending based on speed and gravity. Biologically, our perception of time is equally constructed. Your brain takes roughly 80 milliseconds to process sensory input and construct a conscious image of the world. By the time you become aware of a bird singing, a light turning green, or a clock ticking, the event has already occurred in the physical world. You are not living in the present. You are living in a slightly delayed, highly edited reconstruction of the past. As we age and our neural processing slows, that reconstruction becomes increasingly streamlined. To keep up with the physical world without crashing, the brain makes compromises. It cuts corners, it smooths over the gaps, it stops showing you the raw footage of your life, and starts showing you a highlight reel. And the reel gets shorter every year. Is it possible to slow the clock? The physics of time cannot be altered. The Earth will continue its rotation, and the mechanical hands of the clock will move at precisely 60 seconds per minute until your heart stops. But the perceived geometry of time remains plastic. To alter the perception of time, one must deliberately sabotage the brain's efficiency engines. When you introduce radical novelty into your environment, when you learn a complex skill, travel to a country where you cannot read the signs, or disrupt your deeply ingrained routines, you force the brain out of predictive automation. You force the camera back to high definition. Suddenly, the days don't slow because a clock misbehaves. They feel longer because your mind must renotice being here. Suddenly, you notice details, every edge. That's the mind doing something similar. It forces attention again to the act of existing. The days don't lengthen because the clock slows. They lengthen because awareness thickens. In a world built for frictionless survival, attention is deliberate friction. Familiarity becomes comfort, and comfort is the medium where time slips away. Here, time speeds up when consciousness acts as an active, decaying participant, a profound threshold of being human. A child in a sunbeam thinks time is infinite because their mind expands to meet the world's scale. An adult by a dashboard clock knows time is finite because their mind has learned to master and predict it. We're all passengers on a vessel gathering momentum. The seconds don't shorten, the minutes don't shrink. The horizon flattens, and memory lets the world slip by unnoticed.